Yeah. So there's a lot happening, and I wish we could cover it all in 4 hours. But I'd like to touch on as much of it as we can, even if it's just to introduce the concept. But this period is going to be an explosion of understanding, and people will begin to realize they know things that they've never learned, that they just simply know these things. And it's not about faith. It's not about having faith in something. It's about simple knowing. And this is one of the hard things, because as kids, we're trained we have to study to know something, or we have to do something to have something. And this age coming up is there's nothing more to learn, and you don't have to do something to have something. Now, will everybody be billionaires? No, because the monetary system is going away. The inequality that greed has created, the division between those who have and those who don't, that is going to be the end of the world idea of currency. And that's coming very quickly. So that'll also be very interesting. In some countries, they're cashless now, so you simply have credits, and how you got those credits based upon what your contribution was to something. So, any other thoughts?
I had a really strong response to what you shared about the heart chakra no longer being the mediator, and probably just immediately thought of something that I've been really aware of is over the last years, everybody's talking. Everybody's talking. I can't remember any time where so many people were just talking. And as I've worked with my clients, I've become aware that it's just sound. It's just so much talking, and no one has an awareness of the energy of what they're talking about. So that was really fascinating to me, and that has totally shifted how I work. I work really very slowly now with people when they bring something in, that we actually breathe with it. Because if it's aligned, it's not creating. If the feeling and the thought is aligned in that communication, which I don't think it is, it's definitely not creating what they want.
Yeah.
So that was really fascinating to me. And then I know we're in the unified realm here, but it's hard not to keep bringing it back to so much of what we're seeing, of how this is showing up in the present moment.
Yeah, and the hard thing, Krista, the hardest thing I think is if you know how this new system works, and you're now in the world coming from that new system, how do you then relate to others that not only don't understand it, but absolutely will not inform themselves of it? They don't want to know it.
Right. That's a lot of where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah. I've noticed that over the years, and I think this might be a function of getting older also, but I take so much joy in being able to see my mind expressing as my reality. even the guy following so close that I can count the hairs in his nose in traffic. You know, seeing how my mind wants to go with something that would be out of an old ritual, an old feeling or a thought ritual, you know, where you see something and you want to rail against it. And then if you understand this is my mind, then what am I railing against? Wouldn't it be better to know why this feeling and thought is there, as opposed to trying to get rid of it somehow in the world?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's, but I noticed that I even have friends from my junior year in high school that we communicate. And I noticed that they want to talk about high school as though it's happening tomorrow. But that's, and there's no judgment in that, but that's basically what's going on, is that people now, because of what they're feeling, they want to go back to a time that made more sense to them. They want to go back to a time that basically allows them that feeling of comfort inside that seems to be diminishing. Because as we go deeper into this unity cycle, what people are going to find out is that their conflicts are going to start slapping them in the face. They can't get away from it. They have to be released, not resolved, released. You don't have to resolve all your inner conflicts. Simply release them. It's no longer a part of me. I release it to itself. You know, that's my little ritual of working with it. Yeah, this is exciting. It's an exciting period of time, and wow, there's so much that can distract us away from knowing what we are. Yeah. Any other thoughts? This is for me, doing these kinds of programs. I love being in a room because I can feel the room. So if I'm asking any thoughts, it's like, let me feel you. What's going on?
I have a question that goes back to kind of the beginning segment where you were talking about the spirits will ascend, move into soul, and then at a certain period of time, if I get this right, body, spirit, and residing spirit? Or could you speak a little bit? Because it sounded like when you said residing spirit, that's something new to evolve.
Okay, so what's beginning to happen for humanity in this cycle, this unity cycle, and it will unfold quickly. We think of 100 years as a long time, but it's really a blink of an eye. What's happening is our physical bodies have evolved to the point that they can. Then our spirit imposes on the physical bodies the body's function. So when your embryo began, a soul was attracted, a spirit was attracted, and the spirit began to form the body. And what it did was it brought in strategies from its most recent incarnation that then became what science calls epigenetics, where it begins to switch on and off certain genes based upon the strategies that it brought in. Now, they've also had generational knowledge about epigenetics. Like I think was a village in Norway that kept copious notes over a period of 1,000 years, and not only about weather and conditions and events and everything, but also kept notes about how people responded to it. And that's the foundation of what we think of as epigenetics. And when the spirit influences the body, the soul is not functioning with the body until just before the baby is born. So at about maybe the last third of the last trimester. And what the soul does is it comes in through the thymus gland, and it has 144,000 cells that it descends into matter, and that spread out through the body. As those cells began to take on a physical structure, they seat themselves in the body. Chinese medicine uses this, as we call them, you know, like acupuncture points, or energy points. And then the soul seats itself in the form, and the spirit, even though it's driving the human experience, the spirit always knows the presence of the soul and knows it can be, any choice or decision or anything it makes can be overridden by the soul. The soul, not being judgmental, seldom ever intervenes, and usually only intervenes when there's a crisis or when there's something that's really tough going on. Like you hear the urban legend of the woman lifting the car up off her child with one hand, kind of thing. So when the souls leave Earth, the eternal souls leave Earth, in order for the human race to continue, because the human race has become soul dependent, there has to be a number of soul spirits who have ascended to soul level. So what happens is, like, let's take Isa, or Jesus as he's known in the West, Isa. Isa was the spirit that collaborated with a soul by the name of Sananda. And Sananda was a soul that resided on the earth in one single form for around 10,000 years. And he was he became what some people refer to as a Time Lord, meaning he oversaw a period of time, and that was during the last Lemurian cycle of unity. And the spirit that we think of as Isa in this life was the spirit that collaborated with Sananda. So when Sananda left the system, the spirit continued on, incarnating and continued growing and continued expanding, to the point that it needed to then ascend to the next level. And so it found a womb of a previously ascended spirit, and that was Mary of Sepphoris. We think of, you know, her as the mother of Jesus, but Jesus impregnated Mary, or Esau impregnated Mary, and then the final phase of his ascension to soul level, spirit going to soul level, was when he ascended that body. So there are two ascensions. The first ascension happened with Sananda, and then the second one happened where he created his own body and then ascended that body into pure energy. Now, his soul, he was a spirit, now he's a soul, then he now takes the position of a soul collaborating with a spirit through a body. He can now do that, and he's an earthborn soul, not an eternal soul, which makes that person extremely powerful. And literally, if an earthborn soul is collaborating with an enlightened spirit through a physical body, if they told Mount Everest to move 3 meters, it could not resist it. It's that kind of power. And the Earth experience in the future will be that, eternal souls are being replaced by earthborn souls. So we're going to start seeing a lot of ascensions happening and the spirits elevating to soul level so that the human race can continue.
And that's what you're referring to as residual, or that was your word.
Residual. Did I say residual?
I believe so.
Residing.
Residing. Okay.
Yeah.
Residing. Okay. Yes.
Right.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
it's this whole new, I am so excited about the fact that humanity has crossed that time bridge, and I'm so excited about it. And yet it can be very terrifying because people don't know what they are. And like you said earlier, there's a lot of people talking now, a lot of conversation, a lot of use of throat chakra. And when you don't know what you are and you're using your throat chakra, you can cause great damage to other people's minds.
Yeah.
So I want to go back over something. So everything is mind. So we have consensual agreements within mind. So we have consensual expectation as well. So when you're sitting in a chair and let's say you're in a room full of people and you're all sitting down, when you all stand up, the consensual expectation is the floor is going to support your weight, it'll support your mass, and when you stand up, you won't fall through the floor or you won't rise above the floor. So that's consensuality as far as expectation goes. Like I was in India and I saw this sadhu who was levitating about 6 inches, 7 inches above the ground. And it wasn't a trick because all he had on was a very baby, not even a loincloth. It was just enough to cover his junk. And you could see clearly that he was levitating above the ground, above his prayer mat. He had broken through consensual expectation. He had broken through the consensual nature of mind. He could begin to express himself in a way that other minds couldn't. And you know, everybody was like, wow, this is so exciting. But instead of saying, okay, if this is true, then now what do I do to have that experience? How do I break free of this consensuality? How do I break free so I can be self-expressive? I can express at even a higher level. So it's exciting to be at this point in our on the planet stuff. So mind. Everything is simply mind. And when I say that, I hear this silence, this shushing. It's like, really? I wonder if that's true. Any thoughts?
So how do I break free from that?
By knowing what you are. Simply by knowing what you are. That's the beginning. If you know that you're a threefold being, a trifold being, then a lot of the mythologies and a lot of the religions and all of the truths that are hidden in those, you know, then it becomes extremely clear to you how much you know. I can remember in Sunday school, I was basically, the minister came to the house and asked my mom not to let me come to Sunday school anymore. And it was because the Sunday school teacher, the youth minister, was saying that if you're bad, Satan will punish you for eternity. You'll, and he described hell. It was the fire and and the torture and the pain and the constant. And so I asked, so Satan is evil and mean and all those things. And if you're evil and mean and all those things, why wouldn't Satan, give you an award when you die? You obviously represented him. I didn't use these words, but basically what I said was, why would he be angry with me if I was in fact doing what he did? Wouldn't he somehow think of me as one of his? So all these concepts that we have and all these ideas that we have begin to melt away when we begin to know what we are. Religion is a wonderful accounting. We begin to understand that the Holy Bible is nothing more than some allegory and some historical information about the Jewish people, and then about this being we call Jesus the Christ. As a threefold being, as a triad being, you are of the Christ race. When you're what you are now, you're a Christ being. And when you begin to know that, you have to begin to behave in that manner. You have to begin to present that to the world as a demonstration of that. So how you break through the consensuality, or this consensual agreement we have, is by knowing what you are. And then holding nothing against yourself. All these inner conflicts we have, they're just things we hold against ourselves. We make ourselves wrong. And one of the other phrases, if there were a couple of phrases that we've used over the last 30 years, place within me expressing itself as you as being one, the other one is giving up the need to be right. And the reason why this is so important is every layer of conflict around us is based in a moment of us needing to be right about something. And because as our early training, our first 7 years, we were wrong a lot. No, you're wrong, don't do it that way. You're wrong, no, you don't know how to do that, I'll do it for you. You're wrong, we develop a need to be right. And it doesn't matter if we're being right about being right or being right about how wrong we are. It's the same energy, it's the same chemicals in your brain that get to happen, needing to be right, even if it's about needing to be right about how wrong we are. That creates the same chemistry as being right about something. The need to be right is the addiction, and that reinforces all those bands around us. So when you see this sadhu in Varanasi, peacefully hovering 6 inches above the ground, and your brain is firing, this can't happen, this isn't true, what's the trick? Let's look underneath him, he's got a pole up him and he's sitting on the pole or something, what's going on? We struggle instead of allowing. We struggle against what seems to not be true. And then we create this need to be right about that. There is a modern sadhu, and when I mention his name, some of you will think, well, he's just an entertainer. But there's a modern sadhu, and he's since fallen off the radar because of some difficulties he got into expressing himself sexually, and that's David Copperfield. He understood how to break the bonds or the boundaries of consensual reality. And many of the things he did from that platform. They weren't illusions, they were expressions. So how you break this layers and layers and layers down is by watching where it is you need to be right. And watching how the areas in your existence that you want to exclude from yourself, that no, that's not me, I don't agree with that, that's not how I think. That's if it's that really doesn't allow you to let go of those layers, basically.
So it's judgment?
Pardon me?
It's judgment?
Well, judgment is actually a symptom of inner conflict. You have a judgment because there's an inner conflict, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can go at this from dropping judgment, and that's an extremely difficult thing to do because of our early training. We're trained to judge good from bad, right from wrong. We are trained that way. Discernment is very different than judgment. You know, if you look at a tree and you see the brown trunk and the green top, you can discern the colors or your ability to connect to certain energy reflecting off of that substance. You can see that it's green and brown. But if you say that's the best green and that's the best ground, or that's the best tree ever, or why don't they get rid of that tree? I mean, all of that other conversation is about those conflicts within you,
Yeah.
expressing, you know, as judgment.
Gary?
Yeah.
This is something that I think about quite often. Is this human need to be right, as you express it, something that's more specific to this duality cycle than past duality cycles?
No, all duality cycles are basically the same. The difference is this duality cycle took humanity on a very different path. This duality cycle focused on the male dominant energy, which is a conquering energy, which is an energy that is divisive. It likes to divide. It likes to conquer. It likes to see weakness and exploit it. Instead of raising everyone up to a certain level, this duality cycle has been, you know, where a few know how to grab power within the game of it, and the hell with the rest. So in previous duality cycles, everybody worked together in a collaboration. Every high tide raises all boats kind of thing. But yeah, this duality cycle has been a really difficult one for humanity. Really difficult.
That's what my sense was, that it feels, I mean, from my limited experience with the past, it feels like it's so very different. So very different.
Yeah, it's, if you go through the Akasha and look back, and the wonderful thing about this is the Akashic records up until 2001, 2011, you could, up until that point, you could pretty much predict how humanity was going to go and what events were going to unfold. And then after that, there seemed to be a lot of smoky probability. And the reason is in this particular unity cycle, we're creating the future every day. We're creating it. It doesn't already exist. There is an immutability about the future in the sense that we are on the planet and we are working toward some common goal, and that is to get off the planet. But in this particular unity cycle, it's going to be, for those who know, it's going to be great. And for those who won't know, who don't want to know, who want the 1950s as opposed to what's unfolding, for those people, it's going to be increasingly dark.